Jack Carr, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Hey, Will, how's it going?
Good, man.
Really excited to be here. Really excited.
Jack, you bought an HVAC business in Nashville, and the worst case scenario happened. Essentially, all of your employees quit on day one. But in 2 years' time, you've built the business back and then some. You ended last year, 2024, 4 times larger in terms of revenue than the business was when you bought it. What a ride. Let's get into it. Start us off, Jack. How did you initially decide that you wanted to buy a business?
Oh, goodness. So it doesn't go back too far. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I was working in the wine industry, Napa, California, for kind of my whole W-2 career. I was director of operations for a portfolio of wineries. Really enjoyed the wine industry. It's fun while you're young and married and no kids. So my wife and I were really enjoying working in the wine industry. I was running operations, engineering, facilities, everything except actually making wine. And then during that time frame, I started to dabble. I started to dabble in real estate, built a little portfolio there, started my own wine brand, which failed miserably. Wine is a very difficult industry. Started a small mobile repair shop, which did really well, had an exit there. Nothing spectacular, low 6 figures. And then my big break was I started a Bitcoin mining server farm circa like 2016, 2017, sold going into 2020, kind of that boom there. And at that point in time, my wife and I said, hey, we have some funds now because this was a very good exit. I mean, we hit the market timing perfectly. Let's take some time off and figure out what we want to do with the rest of our lives. Where do we want to live? Everything. We had one son at the time. Napa is a gorgeous area. We love the wine industry, but it's not really conducive to children. There's just no other families. There's no playgrounds. There's nothing except wine, and children don't do very well with wine. So
you tried.
We tried. We took off, bought a big RV, remodeled the whole thing, started going, and then on the day one, my wife said, hey, Jack, I have to tell you something. I'm pregnant. So we're like, okay, we're not new to this. We weren't trying, but, God has his ways. And a few weeks later, we do the ultrasound, and it's not 1, it's 2. So we have twin girls now.
Coming
but that causes
for your RV. It's going to be a tight RV.
Really tight RV. So we stopped and we had the kids. And then I had this epiphany. I said, hey, I got to go back to work. There's 3 kids in this house. It's not just, 3 mouths to feed. It's now 5 mouths to feed. We're bringing in help to help out with the twins because it was a little bit, 3 under 2 years old is a wild ride.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we brought in some help. We had to pay for that. And I said, hey, my run rate isn't going to last as long as I thought it was, especially if I want to buy a business and work for myself moving forward. So that's when the search began. I was on Twitter in 2020 through 2022, looking at everybody buying businesses here and there, and kind of the Twitter in 2020 to 2022 was a wild ride of like people were out buying businesses and paying crazy multiples, and it was this very exciting time and atmosphere. And so I started my search much like everyone else. Got really serious, and in about a year, I found Rapid Response, which is the business I bought. HVAC, residential service company. I chose HVAC residential service because during my tenure at the wine industry, it was like the only thing I didn't know how to do. We were doing our own carpentry, our own plumbing, our own electrical troubleshooting, like industrial electrical troubleshooting, but I couldn't figure out HVAC. So I was like, I have to figure out this for myself, but also I think that's a moat. In addition to the moat, there's all this kind of tailwinds on the backside. And I feel like I've been really good at seeing those tailwinds. So I was watching as PE started moving slowly into the industry, kind of around 2020. It wasn't the boom it is now. And so with that, I purchased Rapid Response in June of 2022.
Jack, let me stop you there with a couple follow-up questions. So you had success in starting businesses from scratch, And yet you were really drawn to the idea of buying a business. And I guess you were turned on to the idea from SMB Twitter. It's kind of when it was peaking, when I used to talk about it a lot as well back then. Right? So
Yeah.
you were basically seeing all these people do this, and you liked the model, even though you'd had success as somebody starting a business from absolute scratch?
I mean, I had success, but I also had failure, right? So
Yeah.
what people don't talk about is you see all their, every time they succeed, but we don't talk about all the failures. And the 0 to 1 is extremely difficult. It's a time period where funds are very, very tight. They're usually coming out of your back pocket. And it's less of the phones are already ringing and more of how do I make sure I have product market fit? How do I make customers come to me? And with the wine industry, it was fairly silly, but the brand and my type of wine industry, if you watch me on YouTube, I'm bearded, bald, generally muscular man. And my key demographic was like 45-year-old Midwestern housewives. So I'm trying to sell to this demo that I have no idea about, and I don't understand why they're buying. And it was just a very difficult, I saw the difficulty of startup, right? 0 to 1 is a hard road.
Yeah. But you had this success with the server farm. And by that, do you mean that you were hosting miners? Is that what it was? Basically
Correct,
web
yeah.
hosting or miner hosting?
Exactly. So we bought something like 30 miners back in 2016, ran them all the way up to 2020, and then sold the package, the location, everything that came along with it, as well as I had the extra Bitcoin from kind of all that mining in that meantime.
So how much Bitcoin did you have?
Is
that really where your liquidity comes from? Or was it actually the mining business?
Both. I mean, it was probably, I would say, a 60-40 split. Because that time frame between 16 and 20, electricity was still high, but as the Bitcoin crashes, right, you're not making anything. You have to sell it all to get electricity costs or to pay the electricity bill. And so you take little shavings here and there all the way for 4 years, and you kind of just eat it until it pops again. And luckily it popped again, and I exited on those, and then I exited on the actual servers themselves.
Fascinating, man. Well, you're the second guest to come from the wine industry, Matt Rayla, a couple months ago, who bought the termite inspection business in SoCal. He went down to LA to do that. Or maybe it was Orange County. I think it was LA. And then, of course, Chris Kerner, probably been 2 years, but Chris is well known on Twitter and elsewhere. Also had a mining business along with Nick Haluski, his partner. I don't think Nick was very active in that. But the world gets smaller. I think you probably know Chris and Nick.
Both of them, yeah. We're in some groups together.
Yeah, really cool. Okay. And the exit of this business, can you give us directionally what that looked like?
It was
more or less than 7 figures.
It was slightly more.
Okay, great.
So it was enough to really, as 28 years old, 30 years old, whenever that was, it was enough that it put enough on the table to be able to say, hey, let's take a step back and look at what we actually want to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, congratulations, Jack. That's a great win. Okay. So you decide you like HVAC because you don't know HVAC, but I guess what that was you saw it as technical as you all were at the wine business. HVAC was the one weakness because of the complexity. So you saw that there was kind of moat there. If you could be on the other side of that table with an HVAC business, there's good moat because it's not something that people can easily pick up and do for themselves.
Correct. Yeah. It's something that has enough kind of, I don't want to call it mysticism, but it's the refrigeration theory in itself is so unique that, like electricity and water, they kind of flow in the same theoretical pathways, but refrigeration theory is different in itself. And so to have to wrap your head around that takes a solid study. It takes, a decent amount of time to figure that out and understand that. I mean, the electrical side of, an HVAC unit is pretty straightforward. But the refrigeration theory is definitely a moat that even tenured techs, as I run this business now, they still have trouble with it. And so it's this really difficult thing that that if you can figure it out and you can figure out how to get there and understand it, it builds this nice moat around your business that if you're good with it, especially if you're good with it, you have already beat out the other 50% of the companies around you.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating, Jack. I've underestimated. I've had problems. I've had to call HVAC company here twice in the last 7 months, and both times it was just that part of the AC unit died. First, we needed a new, I guess, compressor. Then we needed a new motor. So it seemed pretty easy to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy if you just throw parts at it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say on our pre-call was the very first time in my life I'd heard the phrase refrigeration theory, which I love. That has a certain ring to it.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know it was a thing, so that's good to hear. And you're an engineer by training. You're mechanical engineering in college. Great.
Correct.
Okay, so you have a thesis. Basically, you're going to go find an HVAC business. Give us a little bit on your search and what are the geographical constraints, if any.
Yeah, so my belief, even starting way back then, was that you can't get everything you want, right? Because there's only so many of exactly what you want to buy in a certain geographical location, right? We were in Boise, Idaho. The number of HVAC companies that wanted to sell and the number of HVAC companies that wanted to sell to me were, there's 10. There's 10 companies there. So the ability to get one of those 10 companies is extremely low. It's difficult. You can write them, you can email them, you can send them letters all day. You're not going to get it. And then who knows if they'll pick you, even if they are selling. So my belief was you have to pick industry or you have to pick geography. And so I picked industry, and I was looking at Nashville, Austin, Florida for a small period of time, Charlotte, North Carolina. So my second part to my thesis was pick this trade with a tailwind that was difficult, had a moat. You need a license, which I knew I could get. And then B, pick it in an area that's growing really quickly, which circa 2022, those were the biggest growing markets, right? Everybody was moving out of New York and California, and they were bombarding these places, and the builders were going like crazy. So the second part to that was saying, hey, looking 5, 6, 10 years in the future, how do we know that we can grab a good market share? And we knew we could grab market share if there's new customers in that market. Because HVAC is one of those companies where people really love their HVAC people. They have some guy that they've been using for 10 years. And unless he messes up big time, there's a very low chance that you're ever going to grab that customer, in my opinion. And so we were looking for an area where there was lots of turnover, lots of people selling, lots of people buying, moving, et cetera, in the hopes that would make it an easier time to grab some market.
Yeah. So you needed to get people before they already had a relationship. So you couldn't go into kind of stagnant markets, because then you were going to have to try to steal customers, which is very difficult in this industry, as you believed.
The last part of the theory was we wanted to be in a big pond, right? There's small fish, big pond. There's big fish, small pond. What I've learned now is, maybe there's no right way to do it. Big fish, small pond, you can gain the entire market, small city, third tier city, very, very easy to grow and kind of engulf that entire market, versus small fish, big pond, which is what we are now. We are competing regularly with $100 million companies, big PE-backed monsters, which can be good and bad. But that being said, at the time, our belief was, hey, we want something where we can grow, and we can grow fast, and there's plenty of opportunity. Was that the right choice now? That's I don't know. I don't know yet. Ask me in a few years.
Yeah. Well, a couple thoughts there, but first I want to highlight what you said about a growing market. I've had numerous guests. Alan Lockridge immediately comes to mind. Alan, who bought a business in Charlotte, and his business was backyard stonework. So think patios and pergolas and otherwise. And so construction business, project based, all the things that we're told to avoid, but it's gone really well. And one of the things that he really calls out is just being in a growing market. Charlotte has been a growing market, really strong market. And that tailwind can really not be underestimated. I probably underestimated just how important that is, but I've heard numerous guests, Alan and others, say no. It's been a big deal. Jack, how come I didn't hear you mention DFW in that, or Denver? Those are the other two big markets that we always hear about.
So I love Denver for skiing. I'm a huge skier. Not a huge fan of Denver. DFW, my wife and I did a trip a long time ago where we drove from Austin all the way up to North Carolina. We weren't a huge fan of Dallas-Fort Worth area. We really loved Austin. It was quirky. There's a lake right there. The weather was nice. We drove through Dallas. It just wasn't our scene. So we didn't look there.
Gotcha. Okay. This point about big fish, small pond, small fish, big pond, probably is going to be informed by what you plan, what your vision is. If your vision is to build a business that can be steady and not a giant growth story, but you just want it to be protected and generate $1 million a year or whatever indefinitely, that probably works best in a small market. So you can get it to a place, lock in your market share, and keep competitors at bay, and probably be pretty comfortable. But it doesn't grow a lot, versus the alternative, which is big markets, small fish, big pond, where you're never going to be able to sit comfortably. But if you want to grow, it's an area where there's a bigger market, so you can grow. But it's going to be the elbows are going to be sharper, and as you've already said, you're going to have meaner competitors, more serious competitors.
Exactly.
And so does that tell us what you wanted to do? Was this something where you wanted to?
That's the background. So we built this thing from day one, looking 5-10 years in the future. Our goal by 2030 is to be a $20 million shop. So you can't really do a $20 million shop in a town of 50,000. You could easily do a $3 million shop in a town of 50,000, a $5 million shop, be very comfortable. Like you said, own the entire market, keep competitors out for a really, really long time, love up on your customers, and be a staple of the community, which is very drawing. That being said, you can never, or I shouldn't say never, it's very, very difficult from there then to expand into another city and then do the same thing, because there's already another small company. So it's a very difficult thing to try and grow to where we want to be. So we had to go into a big market. The tribulations and the trials, they make you strong as a business owner, right? The difficulty is what strengthens all those muscles. Like, I would say that we, in terms of customer acquisition, are probably better than a $5-6 million shop in a third tier city, just because, right, we have to compete against multiple $100 million companies. So we've gotten really good with copy and how we find our niche and how we grab those customers and then how we convert those customers to be ours. Whereas you don't have to be as sharp when you're the only person in that town. You just have to beat out, Bobby down the street.
Yeah. It's kind of the big leagues argument, playing in the big leagues makes you a better player. I will say though, as I think it's a counterexample, you tell me, you know him better, your co-host, John Wilson. You guys co-host Owned and Operated podcast, Plug the Pod, great, well-known pod for small business operations. And John's been on this podcast and has a plumbing business, and I think he's now tacked on HVAC. I think he offers, I don't know if he has electrical, but
he does, yeah.
He's got all three. And started in a small market and is now well north of 20 million. But because he's acquired into other markets. So,
Bingo.
Right. So in fact, he has done the playbook that I guess he was forced to, he says on the interview, he was forced to, because he basically saturated his home market and was forced to go up to Cleveland. He's in Ohio.
Exactly.
To go up to Cleveland to grow. So it is possible, I guess, harder.
Definitely possible. Yeah, definitely possible. He went ahead and did exactly what I said, is he outgrew his market. And then at that 10 million mark, moved into Cleveland and then has done extremely well in Cleveland. So it's definitely possible. He's a great example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great, Jack. So you look in your searching for HVAC on Biz Buy Sell in these three markets that you've identified?
Yeah. So, we had a 3-pronged approach, and is Biz Buy Sell. I at one point scraped all the data from Biz Buy Sell to see all the people in these areas and who was in these markets and who was selling. And then we went ahead and I started calling all the business brokers. I wanted to build relationships with them. talk to them, let them know who I am, let them know I'm a serious buyer, give them, my personal financial statement so that they could see I was a serious buyer, which I felt was really important to getting my foot into a door where I could actually buy. And then finally, a business came up a few came up that we bid on and tried to get, but typical story is, we weren't in HVAC. I wasn't an HVAC guy, didn't have an HVAC history. So the seller went a different direction until finally a nice little 780 and change gross HVAC business came up, rapid response, no online presence other than a GMB with like 60 reviews at 4.6 stars. And I said, hey, if this is the time we got to do it. Looking back, did not pay the greatest price for this business. Kind of, the buyer's trap, if you will. I was paying on a multiple of SDE, and realistically, the business wasn't a real business. It was, 3 techs, a dispatcher, and the owner who was doing some sales. And I paid for $780,000 in top line, 200 in SDE and change. I paid like a 2.5 multiple and ended up somewhere in like 600 range. I think it was like 620, 640. For that, did the whole SBA 7A, which was a great process, closed in 45 days. And on June 13th, 2022, I drove all my life in a U-Haul pulling a trailer from Boise, Idaho to Nashville. And I'm started Monday.
Jack, there are a lot of people who buy businesses that are that small, that are essentially, that are basically a crew or a very small team. Maybe not a lot of people, but it happens. I may be jumping the gun here, but you got what appears on paper to be a good multiple, 2.5 times. It sounds like you don't feel like it was worth buying, almost period. I mean, obviously there's some price at which it's worth it, but to get an HVAC business at 2.5x, even if it's really small, doesn't feel crazy. Feels logical. You're all of that risk of such a small team is priced in, meaning you're paying a lower price. So say more about why, in retrospect, it really wasn't even worth 2.5x.
So now that I've been in the business now for, going on almost 3 years, I've realized that it's a buyer's trap. So a $790,000 HVAC business in particular, I can't speak for every type of business in every place and everywhere. I mean, a Subway, that might be amazing. I don't know. But for HVAC businesses, it's just not a real business. And when I say that, I mean, yes, it's technically a real business, but it doesn't have the systems. It doesn't have the processes. It doesn't have the lead generation. It doesn't have the people in place to dictate actually a $600,000 sale. So for example, right, if you grew this business to 2 million, you might have the same 250 SDE or EBITDA, because now you're paying an office manager and you're paying a dispatcher and you're paying all these other people who are the correct positions, the correct roles. They have processes in place. Now it's a business, but you're still making that same 250 seller discretionary earnings. So that's a business that I would pay $600,000 for. The business that I paid $600,000 for was a guy kind of managing, playing video games all day while he had 3 techs running. He would run and do 1 or 2 sales calls, and then somebody would answer phones. Like, there wasn't anything there from a real business infrastructure standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So I mean, I always tell people now when we talk, because I get these questions about HVAC businesses a lot, is making sure that you're buying right? So when I say that, it's understanding that this concept is extremely important, that when you go into a business that you know what the business is and how the infrastructure is set up so that you can make sure that same 600,000 multiple from the 2.5 on the 250 SDE is actually worth that versus falling into this buyer's trap that I did. So I'll get off my pedestal there.
No, that's great.
I mean, it's very important. I mean, you see a lot of new first-time ETA fall into it as well. I was just lucky enough to be able to grow my way through it.
And Jack, you gave us kind of a passing picture of a more appealing business, but let me press you on that. So what infrastructure boxes need to be checked for a first-time buyer to buy an HVAC business?
Well, I mean, just what size, right? So
yeah. So what would the size be? What is the size threshold then?
If so, I always try to let people categorize themselves when they're talking to me. So there's, right, you can be an ops person, you can be an ex-tech, right? I've done HVAC for 15 years. You can be a marketing guru and sales guru, or you could be a finance person. You know, I have lots of experience in finance. I know how to build models, and I know the playbook. That's all well. So it depends. Like for me, I was able to make this business survive because I had the ops experience as well as technical know-how. I was able to figure out really quick, which we can talk about in a second. I mean, day one, all my techs quit on me. So I didn't.
Oh, we're going to get there. Believe me.
I'm sure we will.
We got to hear about that.
but like if you're a finance or you're marketing, I would say go bigger, right? You make sure that you're buying at a $3 to $5 million at the minimum, so that you can have a full lineup of techs in place. You have 6, 7, 8 techs in place. You have managers to manage those techs and their technical know-how. You have maybe somebody working on a little bit of background marketing. They have kind of something in place for there to be able to get to 3 to 5 million, which is moderately difficult. They have a location. Will, I was running out of a garage and then a storage unit and then a location, but making sure like the importance of a location is huge, because it's hard to hire if you don't have it. Nobody wants to work for you out of a storage unit, trust me. And you're not going to get the top tier talent. So you have to get them in other ways, which we can talk about later too. But point being is, depending on what your skill level is in, is it finance? Are you good at finance? Are you good at ops? Where are you good at? Is kind of the sliding scale of where would be the minimum I would buy. And then make sure that whatever you don't have is in that company, right? So I don't have a finance I'm not a financial guru. I'm not going to be creating models. So one of the first things we did is we went and found a bookkeeper that was a really good bookkeeper service. Mm-hmm. And that was one of our first hires. Mm-hmm. And so making sure like you're putting into your business what you don't have, or you make sure to buy the business that already has what you don't have.
Yeah, well put. So you buy this business again, 780, 90 top line, about 200-ish, a little more than 200 SDE, but basically 3 techs, the founder, owner who does a little bit of sales, mostly plays video games, and a dispatcher. But you do the whole SBA process. You buy it for $600,000. You move to Nashville with your U-Haul. Are your twins born yet?
Yes. Yeah. Twins are here. My wife flew them in with a friend the day before. So we were all in. Ships were burned.
Great. Exciting. Okay. So day one.
So I should start actually the drive over is I got a heads up from the old owner that 2 of the techs had quit. Day one, God. 3rd tech had quit. So what ended up happening was the owner, Mr. Video Games, let slip to the supply warehouse probably a week before close that he was selling. Then I didn't have the opportunity to talk to the techs prior, let them know, hey, nothing's going to change. Your jobs are safe. Everything's safe, blah, 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 blah. The really good leadership transition that everybody talks about. Yeah. I didn't get the opportunity to even potentially get there because he let it slip. The guys went to the warehouse. One of the guys went to the warehouse. The warehouse told the tech that, hey, your owner's selling. And then they said, oh, what? One of them was disgruntled because he wanted to buy another one, didn't know me, knew I was going to come in and change things, which, I mean, was moderately true. And he didn't like that. So they all scattered the day before I got there. So I started with a part-time CSR dispatcher. And day one, I was running calls.
Wow, Jack. And so on a scale of $1 million to $2 million, how mad were you at your seller? I mean, he's just made $600,000 off you, and he just nonchalantly calls you and says, "Everybody's quit."
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I was fairly furious. I mean, but on the backside, I was kind of tied to him, right? So I was
Mm.
furious at him because, right, I just bought this business. I just paid a ton of money to get here, to move my life. This is it. But at the same time, right, I'm tied to him because I don't know HVAC. He does, kind of. He's supposed to know HVAC. He's done it 16 years. So he knows HVAC. I don't have any techs. I'm running calls. We have a 2-week transition. He's moved his family down to where he was going. So he was already all out of the state as well, ready to go. And there's a 2-week transitionary period where I have him teaching me HVAC. Like I'm the helper and he's going around doing these maintenance and service calls. Meanwhile, I'm trying to figure out what maintenance and service is. What goes into a maintenance there? I don't know. So, I mean, really coming in blind. And so, luckily, residential service, a decent portion of the troubleshooting when you run into issues comes from electrical, right? So it's like you said, it's a compressor, it's a motor, it's a contactor, it's something that's electrical, which I had a huge amount of experience troubleshooting. Like that was what we did at the wineries, not a big deal. The problem came back to refrigeration theory. It's like, oh, what is a superheat and a subcool? I have no idea what this means. Like hookup gauges, there's numbers there. That's something. But so I had to figure that out really quickly. And what that was essentially me starting every one of my mornings at like 3:30, going on YouTube, trying to understand, what does this mean? What does this mean? How do I? So just really the school of hard knocks really quickly. And because it was the middle of June in the South. So it was hot, sweaty. People were calling, people were angry. But luckily we had those calls in. I was able to pick it up pretty quickly, and I got another tech on board shortly after that. Not the best tech in the world, but was able to hire. So,
wait, so Jack, did you go do any calls by yourself?
Yeah, actually. So I told the owner, since he wanted to leave to go with his family, because like I said, he'd already moved out of state, or his family had moved out of state. I let him go after a week. I said, there is nothing and because I'm still furious, right? I just bought this. I'm tied now to it. What am I going to do? But that being said, there was little value in having him. Like I was learning more from YouTube. I'm not it wasn't the greatest at customer service, but I was learning like, oh, well, goodness, I have to figure this out fast. And I did. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And I said, you're holding me back. I'm just going to learn this on my own. Kind of, it's my style. Let him go after a week, and then started running from there. Solo with my dispatcher, giving me calls, lining me up, and I was a tech.
And so for how many calls did you do solo? House calls. And you were just residential,
first year,
you said?
All summer. So, 3 to 7 a day for, 4 months.
Wow, Jack, that's crazy. Okay, so first of all, when the news breaks that everyone's quit, is that a fetal position moment? I mean, are you in absolute panic, or are you more just kind of
yeah,
stiff-jawed? I'm gonna push through this, or what's your emotional state?
Emotional state is probably just shock. Like when you get into that, people get in that shock scenario. It's just the realist in me just went, it is what it is. You have to run these calls. You have to figure it out. You have to do it all. And so, like I said, I just turned it on. Wake up at 3, learn HVAC till 6, run calls till 6 p.m., do all my paperwork, try to hire, put stuff on Indeed, get people on board, start the next day very similar. And so, bless my wife for being able to put up with me during that time period, but it was just nose to the grindstone. Getting upset or worrying about it, or going into fetal position would be probably the opposite. It probably would have ended me, right? Because I would have just froze.
And so, being that it's the summer in the South, happily you only have to learn half of HVAC, the AC bit, and so you got another season to learn H,
which I did.
Which you did.
That's extremely accurate, because then starting fall, I had to do the opposite. Is like, okay, now I have to learn heating really quickly. So, there's only a few that still haunt me that I just didn't figure out, or I didn't treat the customer right because I was, didn't know. But there was only less than a handful. Once again, it's really, really basic if you know electrical troubleshooting. So we got there, we survived. I mean, but it taught me a ton. It taught me a ton because I was able to be every position in my business, which was amazing. So now it's super helpful. But also, I hear about this, and I'm a big proponent of it, is building a company my way. I got to have the call volume coming in day one, but I also got to design every step in every system and every workflow throughout my business, for good or bad. Whereas the alternative is I buy the company, the head tech. I started with all three techs theoretically, and the head tech, he doesn't like me raising prices, or he doesn't like me doing this, or doesn't like me doing that, and threatens to leave. And then I'm scared of him leaving, so that I don't raise those prices. And now we're stuck without being able to grow because, there's just so much that I hear, like these stories over and over again. And the nice part was learning all this refrigeration and all this HVAC made getting my license super easy. I went in there, knocked it out, got my electrical license, got my plumbing license, got my HVAC license. Like, there was just nothing. By doing it, I was able to just then go and get those licenses. But also, like, I'm not afraid of my team. Nobody can hold me hostage at my business. If they don't like something, they don't like it. But at the end of the day, it becomes my choice, and I don't make those choices out of fear of losing people, or fear of a tech not liking it, or fear of, just whatever.
Because you know your business so well.
Correct.
Nobody's got that power over you. Whereas a typical acquisition entrepreneur, there's going to be so many corners of the business that they don't know, at least in the first couple of years, that they feel hidebound by the whatever that person is in the business that controls that fief.
Yeah. So like a common one we get a lot is, we can't sell that for this price. And the answer is, well, are you providing value? Are you doing your full evaluation? Because I know I could sell it for that price, because I have. Like, I've been in the field and I've sold it. So why are you having trouble? Well, Jack, it's da, da, da. Well, no, this is not the core issue. The core issue is that you're putting yourself in the customer's shoes when you need to allow the customer to live their own life. Like, it's not your job is not to be them. So I was able to be able to have that insight into my own business from day one, because I had to. I've answered phones. I've been dispatcher, CSR, tech, install, like the whole nine. The last thing I refuse to let myself do is braze, because if I learn how to braze and solder properly, I'll do that too. I'll go out in the field at, like, my wife will kill me. I'll be out there at 9 p.m. installing units. And so I force myself not to learn that. As ironic as it is.
I don't even know. I couldn't tell you what that is. I've never heard that word in this context.
Yeah. So when that compressor that they had to cut it out, and then they have to, like, essentially it's welding the copper back together. So that's the one thing I won't learn is welding copper.
Mm-hmm. You won't learn it just so that you're not tempted to do it.
Because I'll do it. No, I know I will. Like, I'll be out there doing it.
You're highlighting one of the flaws of our model of entrepreneurship through acquisition, which is the reality is you are inheriting somebody else's business and the way they've put stuff together. And it almost certainly isn't the way that you would have done it. So you spend, while a lot of this is a shortcut, one of the kind of steps back that ETA is undoing or redoing the things you don't like about the processes or the internals of the business that you inherited. I'm reminded of a recent interview, which hasn't aired yet. Chris Edwards, who bought a flooring business and has now exited that flooring business. And he's thinking about his next step and thinks he wants to start something from scratch now that he has a little capital to do it. And one of the big reasons is, like, he did feel frustrated by always feeling a little bit, a lot of friction in moving the business forward, because he's, basically dealing in somebody else's business, always, working with somebody else's business that, he put his fingerprints all over and changed and stuff. But just the idea of a blank canvas is very appealing to him now that he knows how to be a business operator, a business owner. So did you want to respond to that? Or?
I mean, it's accurate. I mean, it's definitely one of the things, and it's something that I see a lot, So, I mean, I fully agree is that a lot of people have those feelings. Once again, I talk to a lot of HVAC business owners, and that's one of the big issues that they have. My advice always is, right, use leadership, trust, build the rapport with your employees, but let them know, like, I'm just not going to be held hostage. We have to make decisions in this business. It's my business now. And then as you go forward with it, own those decisions, own the change management, own the process, and don't let that happen, because that's going to be the one hindrance on growth and on you feeling like this is your business, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's my advice.
yeah. No, it's great, Jack. And so I also got to ask. So are you just a genius that you figured this stuff out? YouTube University for a few weeks, because you yourself, Jack, said that HVAC was the thing that you guys had such a hard time figuring out back in your winery days. So, but now you're making it seem like, 3 hours of early morning study for a few months and you're good to go. I know you're not good to go. You were, there weren't jobs that didn't go your way and you were still learning, but still that's a pretty tight timeline to go from zero to tech. And you also had the electrical experience. So you weren't starting from absolute zero. But anyway, address that. I feel like, wow, so you could learn how to be a tech that quickly?
I think that, how do I want to put this? Will, you're backing me in a corner here. No, I'm not a genius. I think when people get put in positions where, it's sink or swim, you have a choice, and the choice is to sink or swim. And so, HVAC has consumed my life for the past 3 years. Yeah, it's 3 hours of book experience, but it's then followed up by 8 hours of in-field experience per day, every day. So really, it's 11 hours of experience a day for 4 months straight. Yeah, I mean, you become a decent tech. I mean, that mixed with my background in 8 years of electrical troubleshooting, I'm not saying that anybody could do it. I'm not saying that anybody can't do it. I'm just saying that it's a sink or swim moment, and I'm putting in the work and the hours to know. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had a lot of help along the way. There's people to call. There's great people in this industry who will take your phone call and try to help you answer questions. There's great tools out on the internet that will let you. I mean, you could probably use AI now and say, my subcooling system, my superheat system, what do you think this is? And the AI would probably tell you now. So I'm very good at utilizing resources, and then I'm very good at, when something comes to a sink or swim moment, making sure that I swim, because I don't like losing.
Well, Jack, the burning the boats phrase is one that's used and overused. But this is the perfect example of why that term exists. People talk about burning the boats, and then it's fine. They don't need, but you were really in a position where, had you not burned the boats, you would have turned around. Like, this was a disaster.
Correct.
So having had no out was really what forced you through. Yeah, my other favorite is the Winston Churchill phrase: "When you're going through hell, keep going."
Yeah,
it's exactly. The only way out is through.
And that was the way we got out. So, I mean, realistically, the only way we got through was to keep going. And we had some amazing hires. We've, found some amazing people that have been able to help. It's not only me. I'm not the only person here. But we, within that first year, we were through the kind of cap where I'd say the pain point of the SBA loan. So we just grew past pain, and now we are in different pain, and we have to grow past that. And that's owning a business. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get into some of the tactics and how you've done this growth. There's a lot there still to go, Jack. But I do also want to just kind of tease out this philosophical question of, okay, you've explained to us what you were in some ways uniquely positioned to figure this out and to become a tech in an accelerated way. You just articulated why perfectly. You're an engineer by training. You had all this electrical experience, and then you were basically getting 3 hours of book study and 8 hours of field study a day after day after day, and you burn the boats. So you learned quickly. That makes sense. Still, you learned quickly, and you were uniquely positioned to do so. Still, it makes us wonder. Especially given how much you've grown this business from basically zero, just you, Jack, is that Is the takeaway to your story going to be that actually starting a blue collar business from scratch is better than buying one?
The opposite, Will.
Really? Because you effectively were starting from, you had your customer support rep part-time and that was it. And you've built this thing in 2 years up to $3 million in revenue.
Yeah. You know what's worse, Will, than all your techs quitting on you day one and having to figure out how to be a tech? It's the phone's not ringing and you have techs that you need to schedule and get out and you're paying them and they're believing in you. So the one thing I can never complain about and why we chose this, part of the reason why I chose this specific business was its location. It's, it was the only, I'm going to say this because I know that I said before, like big fish, small pond, like we are in the Nashville metro, but in our small community or our suburb, we are really the only, we're the only fish. There's like one or two others, but we're the biggest. And so what's worse than not having than everybody quitting is not having the phone ring and not having those 4 to 7 calls a day. So we were still able to generate like large amounts of revenue, even with me running, with somebody answering the phones. It's able to hire someone because we were a semi-known business. Yeah. And so, that's one of those hills I'll die on is I think ETA is extremely important because I've, like I said in the beginning, I've started up a business, and to not have sales and to not have those phone rings, not have that phone ringing is much more difficult than having to figure out operations in my mind, because I'm an operations guy. I'm sure someone on the other side who's like a marketing guru would be like, why would you ever say that? Just, I can make the phone ring. I just need to hire someone to do it. So, for me, I think from my personal experience, ETA was the best route for a home service business. And then, even buying wrong, like ETA also opens you up. Like you have to pay to get into the game. And if you don't pay to get into the game, you can never play. There's people who from 2020 they're still on Twitter. They still haven't bought anything. It's been 4 years and they're still sitting on the sidelines at their W-2 part-time search or whatever the case may be. And my advice is go do it. Like you just have to do it sometimes. If there's any theme to this episode, it's just do it. Whether that be learning HVAC or just going out and buying something. Because once I had that starting point, decent part of our growth was organic, but also a decent part was more acquisitions, right? So we bought 2 businesses after, and without buying the first one, we couldn't have bought the second and third one or fourth one. But that was
so I really want to get into this, Jack. This is great, and I'll just preface it by basically saying that this is a theme. What we're about to hear from you, this is a big theme. That when you get in it, as a searcher, it can be so hard to find a business to buy. But once you're in the game and you've bought a business and other people in your community, your local area have heard about it, opportunity, not always, but there's definitely a theme here where a trend where those opportunities start coming to you and all of a sudden doors open that you didn't even knock on. It's such a dramatic difference. And there's been plenty of Acquiring Minds guest examples who were able to do a bunch of bolting on relatively quickly just by being in the game. And so you're the next example of that. So please give us these examples.
Yeah. So in the first 6 months we started, I'm running the business. I'm engulfed in it. We're posting on Facebook. We're doing everything right. We're growing slowly. We're still trying to hire people. And because I'm in the business and I've been asking my distributors, everyone I talk to who I know, that my subs, anybody who knows anybody else who is in HVAC, I'm saying, hey, we're always looking to buy. We're always looking to expand. And so an opportunity came about 6 months later to buy another $600,000 shop, so slightly smaller than my first shop. And we ended up closing on that acquisition for $12,000 to $13,000, with the first $6,000. Big difference, right? You're smiling, Will. The big difference from $600,000 to $12,000. But like that's the key is, A, I would never have had that opportunity hadn't I been in the business. But B, the opportunity actually wouldn't work because it was like a one-man shop with a helper. And so there was really no systems. Like it's just a book. And so that's kind of the key. Is like by then we had our, CSR, we had our dispatching down. Like we had some systems in place for marketing. Like we're starting to get systems we can afford to take a book on.
Yeah.
And so we were able to close on that book for $6,000 up front, $6,000 in rev share based on that portfolio of customers. We paid out in like the first month or 2 months, which was amazing. And that was, a huge growth point for our business. We also got a great tech. That helper came on to work for us. He worked for us for like a year and a half. Amazing guy. And
just to be clear, Jack, forget the book of business. You would pay $12,000 just for a good tech, right? If you were out there paying a recruiter,
exactly.
that's something you'd pay. You pay a $12,000 fee just to hire a good tech. So an incredible deal.
It's definitely, there's definitely value in being able to grab a good tech. And so that was huge right out the gate, because the tech had been in the industry for, 20 years and, all of this stuff. But we were still out of a storage unit. So speaking of hiring, like hiring was so difficult at that time that had a huge value point to it, just to be able to have that extra tech. But then again, now we also have the phone ringing. Like I got a text message this morning asking, hey, is this guy's business? Did he sell to you? Because we need help. And so we're still getting unsolicited calls to that number 2.5 years later that didn't convert over with his book, but they had his number saved somewhere. So we're still getting those opportunities.
And I want to tell us the second deal, Jack, because then I want to dive deep into when you say buying a book of business, what does that mean exactly? What are you getting? You've teased it, but tell us the second deal first.
Second deal was $290. So it was a guy who was working part-time as a firefighter, part-time as an HVAC guy. I found his deal on Facebook Marketplace. Like I saw the truck was up for sale. And I wrote him a message and said, hey, I see this truck is up for sale. What are you doing are you shutting down business? What are you doing with it? And he goes, yeah, I'm just going to go firefight full time. This is too much. I said, what are you doing with all those customers? Like, who's servicing them? How are you taking care of them? They have warranties, et cetera, like that. And he said, I might help out with a few of the older ones, but like I'm letting them know I'm shutting down. I said, well, how about you sell it to me? I'll take it over, and the truck, and I'll just buy out your inventory. I'll buy out everything. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up buying that business, which was $290 for just around $25K, with most of that $25K is in the truck itself.
In the truck, yeah.
Yeah, which we also needed, right? We needed vehicles as well, as we're starting to like really start growing with these two acquisitions. And so we ended up buying.
And when you say 290, he was doing 290 of revenue. So that's that's how you value the book of business.
Yeah. So, the way we value, to get to really technical, we have, this is the way I've just done it because it's my belief, is I take their last 3 years of customer base and I say, these are customers that have called you, or if you've called them and gotten out there in the last 3 years, these are your customers. I'm going to take 50% of that. Mm. So if you have 1,000 customers in the last 3 years that you serviced, I'll take 500 of them. And I'll say, hey, out of these 500 customers, my customer acquisition cost is this, $100. So I'm going to pay you is that 50,000? 2 zeros, yeah. Mm-hmm. 50,000 for all those customers, because that would be the same cost for me to get 500 customers. Mm-hmm. And that's how I value these books of businesses. And it adds enough buffer in there to be able to do really well, because the worry is always attrition, right?
Exactly.
Especially with the smaller ones, it's like, hey, this is my uncle's friend, or this, I know him from church, or, he's my firefighter buddy's mom. So we're going to lose those customers. We're going to lose a lot of those customers. And so we want to make sure that we are buffering ourselves properly to be able to handle that kind of loss in customer base.
And so that's why you're only paying him basically for half his customers, is to give you that buffer, right?
Half of the last 3 years of his customers, yeah. So not even his whole customer base, just like, hey, who have you talked to? Who have you worked with in this many years? Because they're the ones who are most likely to call you a second or a third time.
And that's how you value his book of business. But does he, in fact, give you the entire history, the book going back to since forever, more than 3 years ago?
Yep. And that, that's huge. So the next step, right, that we do. So yeah, like you were saying, the book of business essentially is just, we want their phone number. If they have a Google business profile, Google business page, we want that. And then we want your history. Like as far back as it goes, the more history you have, the better, because we can outbound to those customers. We can reach out to them and let them know specials and this and that. And so that's kind of where all the value is the phone number, having people call you and the ability to call them from somebody's number that they trust.
Yeah.
And that's part of the attrition is they have to trust. And so we do a lot of steps around once we've gotten that book to try and keep as many of those customers as we can.
Well, I want to thank you for that. And we're going to get into that right now. But just so
Awesome.
your experience so far, do you feel like that 50% number is accurate to what you've now seen, that you're basically able to retain half the acquisition's customers, or yeah, because I assume that 50% number was just kind of like finger in the air. You're kind of like, yeah. So what is the actual number in terms of how much you retain?
So the actual number, I think, is going to really depend on the processes you put in place to keep those customers after you make the transition. That being said, I mean, I don't think that number is wrong. I like the 50% number. And moving forward, that's the number we continue to use when we make offers. And it's because it puts enough buffer in there just in case, right? All you're doing is picking up phone numbers and, addresses and history. There's some value there, but that value is really arbitrary, right? It could be, in the last 50%, those could be all new units that he installed. That's all he does is install new units. The 50% we pick up is not valuable then. So it's just a really good buffer, in my opinion. It adds enough. Our first acquisition, I think, was closer to like 70 to 80%. And then the second one was somewhere around that range as well. So we generally keep 70 to 80%. And that's us calling out to the customer, getting them on the schedule for a free maintenance, and then kind of keeping them in perpetuity.
So you get this list essentially, and you proactively reach out to them with calls. That's a lot of manpower. I mean, how many? We're talking hundreds of calls.
Usually we start off, there's a few key things we do. The first one we did with that first business, the 600,000 top line business, was we actually had the old owner leave a voicemail recording. So when you called in, you would hear him and his voice, who you've been used to over the years, saying, "Hey, I've partnered with Rapid Response. I'm moving out of the state, but they will take care of you. They'll take care of all my warranties for 1 year. They'll take care of all my service contracts for another year. Press 1 to be connected." Mm-hmm. And so that was huge, right? People got it right away. Oh, he's moving out, but they're going to take care of us. Mm-hmm. And then we'd send out a text message blast to his entire portfolio saying, "Hey, we will maintain your unit for free. We've partnered with him. Let us maintain your unit for free." We wouldn't call right away. We'd text. Text blast was the easiest, most effective. We'd email, and then we'd send mailers. And so we hit them on all 3 fronts, outbound, and then the 1 front, inbound. And we were able to keep most of the customer base when we did that. And then the other 20% that we lost, I don't know if he lost them or, they were already gone prior to us getting it. But from our metrics, of that 50%, 70% to 80% stay based on doing those kind of few steps.
That's amazing, Jack. And so again, you text them once, a text blast, you email them an email blast, you send a mailer, and then when any inbound you get to his number says, "I partnered with Rapid Response, press 1 to be connected." And the offer was, when you say free maintenance, what do you mean? A single visit where you go check their stuff, their machine, their units?
Exactly. We'll come out there, we'll do a free maintenance so you can get to know us, get to know our people. And we'll do your spring or your fall maintenance for free. And then we get out there, we load up on the customer, we do really good maintenance, take lots of pictures, send the full report, do the full evaluation. And with the goal being, like, 1, have them get to know us so that they become our customers, and 2, offer the maintenance program so they can actually become a maintenance customer long term.
And just for the audience who doesn't know HVAC, that is one of the appealing things you can do in HVAC, which to get a little bit of recurring revenue is offer, what is it, a biannual, a twice annual visit where a tech comes out and checks your AC unit and checks your furnace seasonally sort of thing?
Yeah, essentially. I try to compare it to like an oil change on a car. Is your HVAC system is a mechanical system, just like your car is a mechanical system. And so you have to do some level of maintenance on that mechanical system to keep it going long term. And so that's what we do. We clean coils, we wash it down, remove any kind of debris. We're checking electrical capacities to make sure that they're in spec, your amperage is in spec, the voltage going into the unit's in spec. You don't have anything that's like, oh, your ductwork is disconnected, which we get sometimes. And people have been running their AC all summer, and they go, it just doesn't really work as well as it used to. And we get under there, and the system's not like, it's not connected at all. It's not working, man. So, like that's what we do. And we do that twice a year to make sure, that you're going to work in spring. You have the highest likelihood of not having a failure through the extreme weather is what I try to put it as.
Yeah. And just before we leave this buying and retaining customers piece, what about the online presence? What does that look like? They have a Google My Business page generally, and how do you inherit that, or what do you do there on the web?
Yeah, so you port the phone number over so that it goes to you, whatever your VoIP is or your phone system, and then we take over the Google Business page. We take over the email address, transfer it. We leave it usually as like Joe's Plumbing by Rapid Response for 3 to 6 months. And then we finally change it at the 6-month mark to be Rapid Response Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. And then everything stays the same, the pictures, the reviews, but it just now has our name on it. And we start driving LSA traffic, marketing traffic through that GMB, because GMBs utilize geographical location as its like number one, marketing tool to target people in that region. And then we target them to us, and we start taking on phone calls and new customers that weren't even original customers of the said company.
So important. You don't take down the GMB page or consolidate it with yours in some way. You keep it up and just put your name on it after some months.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it some of it depends, right? So where is the GMB out of? If it's out of the person's house, and like the firefighter gentleman, it's still at his house. Like it's still at his house in that same location. And that was part of the contract, because you can't remove this, because we want to be in this neighborhood. We want your customers to see us in the same place that you were. And it's no harm to him. He doesn't get any mail. There's nobody showing up at his door. Like, it's just an online virtual hub for a location for a virtual hub.
And his agreement is that he'll keep it there forever, essentially?
Yeah, until we move it. And, that's the other case, which we've done, is we bought the GMB and then we've just moved it to a different location where we want to be in, right? So this location's it's underperforming. We're not getting as much marketing because of X, Y, and Z. So we'll just move the GMB to a satellite office that we install.
Jack, this is fascinating. I feel like you just really shared a tremendous amount of gold there. Obviously, it's very HVAC specific, or maybe more broadly, home services specific. So it's not going to be applicable to everybody's business. But I think the larger theme there is twofold. To think, if you're in a business where there are books of business, look for opportunities to acquire retiring owners or owners getting out of their business where they wouldn't have another buyer otherwise, because they're just too small. And you, now being in the industry, can absorb that book of business. It's an amazing growth hack. And then how to price that. I guess that would be another piece of this, how to price it. And then crucially, have a dialed in, getting 100% of your attention process to retain those customers. I mean, obviously it all comes down to the retention of that's where you really extract the value from this acquisition. And if you just assume they'll all come with you, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, or customers on the table. Great stuff. What did I miss?
Oh, that's exactly it. I mean, that's the process and kind of the slow roll of 2 years of my life consolidated into, 3 sentences.
Jack, I want to so we've touched on it a little bit with Google My Business, but reviews, again, online reviews. Again, this is going to be most pertinent to home services businesses, but there are a lot of buyers of those. Before we turn there, is there anything more you want to say up to this point in the story? I guess I would just ask, before we turn our attention to reviews, any other tactics that you've used to grow as fast as you have?
One of the hills I'll die on is get into a good group. So, I mean, I'm sitting on this pedestal on your platform saying, oh, you just do this, you just do this, you just do this. And then all of a sudden magic happens. But the real behind the scenes to, well, how did you learn all this? And how did you get here? And how do you know all this is community, right? So you can't get into the community until you bought in. I buy my first business. And one of the first things I do is like, how do I get into an HVAC mastermind? How do I surround myself with HVAC business owners? How do I meet these people so I can learn? Because there's companies out there that'll give you the business playbook. There's, Nexstar, but I'm a brand new business owner. I don't have any money. Relatively, I'm not going to spend $30,000 on, best practices business. It's not in the books right now. And so what I did is just essentially try to find good people like myself who own HVAC businesses, who have done this, who have been in here. And what I've learned is that all the problems are the same. Like every HVAC business owner has the same thing, like recruiting, sales. It's all the same. You tweak it a little bit here and there, but getting surrounded by these people is what helps you. So someone asked me, who's running a $30 million business, not John, different person who's running a $30 million HVAC business. How do you do books of business, Jack? The same conversation that we just had, I had with him. And then I'll ask him in 2 months, well, how do you do this? And how did you do that? How's your membership program look? And so being surrounded by those people and by the industry and immersing yourself in it is going to be the actual key to learning everything that we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that it's so multifaceted that you're never going to figure it out all your own. As much as I like to just be a, do it myself YouTube university guy, I would not be sitting where I'm at today. I don't even think I would have a business currently if I didn't surround myself with other great owners who helped me get here.
Well, good of you to give them credit or not take all the credit yourself. But I think the takeaway there is just how quickly you can learn if you apply yourself to it. Boats were burned. You had to go learn to be a tech. So that's a unique case. But of course, there's so much available online for almost any industry. If you just get up 3 hours early every day and get on YouTube, you can learn a ton quickly. And then if you proactively, like you said, reach out to people in your industry, everybody listening is buying into an industry where there are dozens and hundreds of people way smarter, more experienced than you in this industry, and cultivate those relationships. You can learn a lot quickly in the world we live in today, which is a great thing. And you've taken full advantage of that. By the way, Jack, do you know Pete Cavarilla up in Michigan?
I do not.
Pete's a great guy. He was on the pod. His episode aired probably 2 weeks ago. Bought an HVAC business in Michigan, a sizable one, like 12, 13 million, million in SDE. And anyway, a great interview, really. Also a guy
That's awesome.
And also a guy who really makes a point to be educating himself and networking himself through the industry. All right. So reviews. We know that everybody knows that consumer B2C businesses are all about online reviews these days, but what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're bringing this up because we were talking about best practices and, what makes, we talked about in the beginning is, when I bought the company, it had 4.6, 4.7 stars at like 60 reviews. We're up to over 800 reviews now across 5 locations total. That original location being our kind of hub is, I think I looked at it yesterday, is just shy of 500. So from 60 to 500 in 2.5 years. Making sure that one of your best practices going into a world of AI and marketing is, reviews are never going away, and Google now is the only place where all consumers meet to look at home service reviews, right? They look at home service reviews, they look at reviews for food and this and that. And at the end of the day, making sure that one of the ways that we grew so quickly was being able to focus on really high level of service and asking for those reviews, because those reviews are what goes back into the Google algorithm and tells Google that you're a good company and that they should recommend you to other people.
Jack, I would think that today getting good reviews, asking for reviews would basically be table stakes. And it wouldn't, because we're all consumers and we all know that we have an interaction with a business and 5 minutes later we get a text, hey, review us, please. And so I would imagine that basically just having good reviews wouldn't accelerate your business. It would basically just, like I said, table stakes. It would allow you to survive and live, but not thrive necessarily, because everybody's doing this. And maybe the answer is no, everybody's still not doing this. I mean, you bought a business and he wasn't doing it. Do you see what I'm saying? It seems like it's no longer edge. It's basically, you gotta be asking for reviews because all your competitors are.
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, yes, right? Everybody's doing reviews now. Home services has always lagged in certain areas. And one of those areas being kind of the change from the late 2016 to now is there's a group of people who we've seen now, they're all running. There was never a $100 million business in 2016 for HVAC or plumbing or home service. They didn't exist. And then 2016 rolled around and we have a bunch of expansion with online presence and Google reviews and LSA and all these marketing tools that has allowed these companies to grow really fast. And so those are the table stakes. Is there's a group of people who have grown and now they're stagnated because they are at 14,000 reviews. Like 14,001 isn't going to make a whole heck of a lot of difference. Mm-hmm. But I think for the smaller companies trying to get out of the 60 review range, it makes a huge difference between 60 and 200. And then there's a huge difference between 200 and 1,000. So yes and no. Yes, in that it's very important. And I think it's still getting increasingly important as you grow, because what we're seeing, I think, and there's a marketing person out there who's probably yelling at your podcast that Jack doesn't know what he's talking about or he wants to add something. But right, your reviews also, I guess, as a service business, I should start here. The service business, we don't have a storefront. Like we have a building, a warehouse, but we don't have a storefront. So our storefront ends up becoming our Google business profile, right? Everybody goes to Google. It's the one place we all meet to look at home service businesses. And so how do you make your virtual storefront stand out the best way possible? And that is through maximizing your Google business profile. And a part of your Google business profile, probably one of the most important parts of your Google business profile, is the reviews. It's making sure that Google's algorithm stays happy, that you're receiving reviews at these locations, that they're good reviews, that they have pictures, and that you're responding to them. And so, playing this game with Google and its review system to make sure that you're maximizing the potential is what keeps the phones ringing. And how we were able to maximize our growth potential is because even though, we've already, like we talked about, we've already really won the Brentwood market. Like there's nobody in Brentwood that, if you're going on Google and every keyword is us, if you search it, we'll be the first one. But what makes us stand out is we are 4 to 5 times more reviews than the next competitor, better rating. And then so now Google says these guys are awesome, right? They're kicking butt. Everybody loves them. So now we're going to improve them for SEO purposes when you're on Google. We're going to improve them for our PPC purposes. We're going to improve them for our LSA, local service ads, LSA purposes. And so it's reviews are kind of the backbone that, even though from a visual standpoint of table stakes, 400 versus 100, you need to have reviews to be in the game. But continuing those reviews and those review process is actually a big part of our organic growth, because it's allowing us to do that hyper expansion.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a diatribe.
That was great,
I
Jack.
knew nothing, by the way, about Google reviews, Google business page, Google anything 2 years ago, by the way. So this is what happens when you get in the home service industry. You go down these giant rabbit holes of algorithmic how to get marketing and leads.
Well, and it just reinforces the point that the home services game is a digital marketing game today. I mean, it's a lot of other things, but it's. I mean, if you can't get your digital marketing dialed,
100%.
And this, by the way, too, Jack, is an example of how you've benefited from being in a bigger market. Maybe you wouldn't have had to have learned as quickly as you have if you'd bought into a small town, third, fourth tier kind of market, which, as we talked about at the top. Anything that you really wanted to say, Jack, that we didn't get to?
So let me just reiterate thoughts so that before I leave your audience with some 4 big takeaways. The first one is buy right, buy correctly. This 250 SDE times 3 multiple, it's not a real thing. It really isn't a real thing unless the business is a real business. And where do you start to see those is in the, like your friend Pete up in Michigan. Like that is a business where you would pay a real multiple on, because at 13 million, it has all of its system. It has it probably even, C-suite teams starting to be put into place. Whereas your 600 or your $1 million business, it's not a real business yet. So make sure, I'm not saying don't go for those $1 million businesses because they're great opportunities. I'm saying if you are going to go for that, make sure you buy correctly and understand the risk associated with that. And one of those risks being everybody leaving day one. So that's the first point. Second point is making sure that you're building it your right way. So you bought the business, great, but don't be held hostage by your employees. Understand your business from all aspects, and make sure that you're using leadership and solid facts to go off of to grow your business. But don't be held hostage on pricing or on how this works or how that works. Listen to your employees. I'm not saying don't listen to them. I'm just saying at the end of the day, you're the one on the hook. I'm on the hook. You're on the hook. If you buy the business, you have the PGs. You have probably 10 to 15 PGs, personal guarantees. So you build it your way, because if you build it someone else's way and it fails, it's still on you. So it comes back to you. I think that the third one would probably be that I'd do it over again with ETA. I wouldn't start from ground up, because even with all the Google knowledge I know, getting those reviews and getting to 0 to 1 in home services is a very, very difficult task, especially when you're in a market that has people with 14,000 reviews.
Yeah.
It's hard to catch up. So if you can buy someone with 400 or 500, you just shrunk that gap by years and years and years. And then it also gets you in the game. Get in the game, play. I mean, no business is going to be perfect. Just find one that works, and then you'll be open to a slew of opportunities. And lastly, I think it's somewhere, make sure that you mastermind with like-minded people. You learn these Google tricks. You're learning hiring, how to hire properly, and how to price, and what's flat rate versus dynamic, and how to change your business with best practices that you wouldn't get without networking with people like myself, with people on Twitter or X or whatever you call it. Like, get out there and actually, that it's a big part of running and owning a business is making sure you have a community around you of strong individuals.
Fantastic recap, Jack. Thank you for that. If people want to reach out, how do you like them to do that?
I still love Twitter. I mean, it's not the same as it was, but the HVAC Jack on Twitter, it's mostly me talking about having an emu at one point, or plastics and HVAC stuff. It's very exciting stuff. So the HVAC Jack on Twitter. The other place that you can find me is Owned and Operated.
And plug the podcast a little bit, or tell us about it. What's the frequency?
So I think we're doing 2 a week, ownedandoperated.com. And it's just us talking about exactly the stuff we're talking about here. It's Google business reviews and why they're important. It's, how we're buying, or how I'm buying certain businesses. It's talking about, CRMs and Service Titan and all the fun stuff that goes into any kind of home service business. So swing on over there, listen to us. You can hear more of me and John, and I appreciate it.
Jack Carr, really fantastic interview, and what a ride. Congratulations on what you went through and how you've built this business back, became a tech yourself. And we said that you ended 2024 with $3 million in revenue. The business had about 700. You built it back to 3 million. You think you're going to get to 4 or 5 million in run rate by the end of this year. Just really, really tremendous.
Yeah. So 100% year over year for the first 2 years. And then we're going to beat out 5 this year is the goal. So
Great.
We're on track for 4 already in week 3 of month, or I don't know when this is launching, but essentially month 1 of the year, we're on track. So we're hanging tight. We're excited. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. This was fun.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come. Stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.